Okay, thank you, everyone. Buenas tardes, good afternoon. My name is Miguel Santana. I'm President and CEO of the California Community Foundation. We are proud to host the People's Hearing today. LA, to be here in Los Angeles, I know following a number of hearings that have taken place so far in Minnesota and Chicago. The reason we're having this hearing is important to document the abuses of civil and human rights to ensure that there's accountability. As we've seen around the world when these violations take place, documentation is central to ensuring that those who committed these crimes are held to account in the future. And so I have an example of what this work would look like. This is a report that was commissioned following the People's Record in Minneapolis. I encourage all of you to review it, to see how this level of accounting of the atrocities that have happened in our community are recorded. And we will ensure, partner with our partners, that we produce a similar report for here in Los Angeles. I really want to thank those of you who are here to testify, in particular, for your bravery, your courage, your conviction to tell your story. I know it is not easy. It's going to be challenging to be able to account for what happened to you and the people you love. And so it means so much that you have taken time to be with us today and to let us know how you've been impacted by these violations that we've seen throughout Los Angeles. I also want to thank our partners, of course, the Hispanic Federation, led by Frankie Miranda, who's here with us, Latino Victory Project, and the Miranda family for your work to establish the People's Hearings and ensure that Los Angeles has a place in this critical event series happening across the country. I know there are plans to go to the South and to Texas in the upcoming months. This endeavor is made that much stronger by local organizations in the room, and I really want to thank all of you who are here today. Organizations like CHRLA, Immigrant Defenders Law Center, ACLU Southern California, of course the UFW, and so many others who are here who've been on the ground leading this work far before these raids took place in our community. As Angelenos and Californians, we're so fortunate to have such a strong infrastructure of organizations that have been leading here in our community. You know, for those of you who are new to CCF, we have been around for over 100 years. You're in our permanent home here in downtown Los Angeles, so we don't plan on going anywhere. Our job is to bring Angelenos together to really confront the biggest issues facing us, from injustices that are occurring in our immigrant community to dealing with the crisis of the unhoused, and so many other critical issues. We are committed to supporting Angelenos by connecting leaders in every sector to come together to respond to those critical issues. On immigration, it is a core issue for us. We are a region of immigrants. Immigrants are critical to who we are as Angelenos, and so we have prioritized immigrant justice as a central part of our work. Far before the raids had occurred, through being chair of a table of foundation CEOs here in California, we started organizing ourselves. We were anticipating what we were going to see in California, and so we started ensuring that there was a strong, robust infrastructure of immigrant justice organizations ready for what was coming. In 1 year, we've distributed close to $100 million of support in aggregate as a number of foundations in California, from the very northernmost part of the state to the most southern, and of course here in Los Angeles. When the raids did occur, we came together and we responded by ensuring that there was a way of supporting our neighbors, our friends, our colleagues who saw a loved one be taken from their home and suddenly are without an income. So we started an LA Neighbors Fund, have distributed nearly $5 million of direct support to Angelenos who need that support, to to provide rent, to take care of basic needs for their families. And we've also been it's been important to us to make sure that the stories of those who have been taken not be forgotten. So every night, if you happen to be in downtown, you will witness projected on our building the stories of those who have been taken here in Los Angeles and around the country. And then everyday Angelenos showing their faces and asking a very basic question: am I next? Am I the next person to experience injustice, to have my rights violated? We are committed to using all of our assets, including this building, to ensure that our immigrants' stories are told, and will continue doing so for as long as it takes. In Los Angeles, immigrants are such a central part of our economy, of our identity, of who we are as a community. At this time, I'd like to show a video. Unfortunately, our Senator Alex Padilla was unable to be here in person, but he did want to send a message through video. So let's go ahead and play the tape. Okay, well, we sort out the
Good afternoon.
Oh, here we go.
I'm Senator Alex Padilla, and I'm proud to welcome all of you to the Los Angeles People's Hearing on Immigration Enforcement. First, I want to thank all the organizations and leaders who made this forum and each of the previous People's Hearings possible. And thank you as well to all of the speakers sharing their stories and their experiences today. Los Angeles is my home, and so I know that it's a city of dreams and of dreamers, of hope and opportunity. It's also a city of and built by immigrants. For generations, people from around the world have come here seeking a brighter future, just like my parents did. They've helped build our neighborhoods, they've strengthened our economy, they've enriched our culture, and they've shaped Los Angeles into one of the world's most vibrant and diverse cities. And we're immensely proud of our immigrant heritage, which is why last summer's events hit so deeply. Now, this week marks 1 year since Los Angeles became the launching pad for Donald Trump's cruel mass deportation campaign. Now, 1 year since masked federal agents, armed as if they were heading into war, came to our city to terrorize our communities. 1 year since they began carrying out warrantless arrests at people's homes, indiscriminately and unconstitutionally abducting people in the streets, at work sites, in public parks, and at car washes and farms. 1 year since they began taking people from green card interviews and required routine check-ins, people trying to do things the right way, only to be dragged away in handcuffs. Now, these raids spread fear through communities across the city and throughout California immediately. Families worried about being ripped apart, workers worried about showing up to their jobs, parents worried about sending their children to school. And then Donald Trump went even further. He sent in the military to invade our streets. Thousands of National Guard troops federalized and mobilized, along with hundreds of active duty Marines deployed to our city to support this mass deportation campaign. It was a moment few ever imagined could happen here in the United States, but it did. And on June 12th of last year, I went into the federal building on the west side in my capacity as United States Senator for a meeting, for a briefing with the general in charge of this operation to find out why and to seek more information. Instead, after listening to then Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem's ridiculously offensive comments that federal troops were there to liberate our city from its Democratic elected leaders at a public press conference, I was compelled to try to ask a question. And you all saw what happened. I was forcibly removed, literally put on the ground and handcuffed for trying to ask a question. And as all that unfolded, one thought kept running through my mind. If this could happen to a United States Senator in front of cameras, the whole press corps was there for the whole world to see, what not just could happen, but what was happening to people throughout the region where there were no cameras to document. Now, my detention may not have lasted very long, certainly not long compared to those detained for weeks or months at a time in places like Dilley Detention Center and Adelanto here in Southern California. But that experience has stayed with me every single day since. And just as our city and countless families across Los Angeles have lived with the consequences of that terror-filled summer every day of this past year, we're here today because their stories matter, because accountability begins with listening, and it begins by creating a record of people's experiences and ensuring that those most affected are not ignored, that they're not dismissed, and that their stories are not erased from the conversation. Today's testimony will help create that record for posterity, and let it serve as a powerful reminder that behind every headline, every statistic, and every political debate are human beings, people deserving of dignity, fairness, and respect. So thank you to all of you for being here today. Thank you for sharing your stories and preserving them for posterity. And thank you for being part of this very important effort to shape the national conversation and through it, future policy.
Thank you. Let's give a round of applause to our senator. I also want to give thank you to those who nourished us today. We partnered with local vendors here in Los Angeles to make sure that we all were fed. So please join me in thanking Villegas Catering Balegas, Nina's Cafe, Gama's Tamales, So Creatives, and our photography is Lexicon USA. Please give them all a round of applause. And now to welcome us from our community partner, someone who we all know and love, Angelica Salas. So please join us.
Testing?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. It's so wonderful to be here with you. Today, what I'm going to do is present on our collective work as to what we have done in order to respond to these raids, and most importantly, what we have witnessed. I will be speaking about the Rapid Response Network, and I want to ensure that we highlight the fact that we have seen horrific actions by ICE and Border Patrol, that we have witnessed it, and that we have seen racial profiling, brutality on the arrest, and the detention of our people in inhumane conditions. That we have seen the militarization, and when we say the militarization of ICE and CBP, we're talking about military-grade guns and rifles and machine guns pointed to our people. And it's important that we note that. So what I want to do is present the aggregate of what we have seen. So I have a PowerPoint. Many of you have actually seen this presentation, and as you know, we've been updating it over time so we can gather all the information that we have. And before I start, raise your hand if you are part of the Rapid Response Network in this room. Thank you so much. So I will begin with our PowerPoint, and as that gets set up so that we could all see it, today is June 8th. And on June 8th, I drove very early in the morning to Adelanto. This is June 8th last year, because our people had been picked up brutally on June 6th and June 7th. On June 7th, we were tear gassed. Our people were hidden from us and shuttled into vans. When we try to, here you go. When we try to ensure that they that they would get representation. The only thing that they did is close the doors to members of Congress, and many of you were there. Lindsay, Marta, many others were there. They wouldn't give us the ability to see them. So we went to Adelanto. At Adelanto, we were there with members of Congress, with Judy Chu, with Derek Tran, with others to try to see them now that they've taken them to Adelanto. And once again, they denied us the opportunity to see them. On my way back, even though we stayed there almost all morning into the afternoon, what we then started hearing was on June 8th, it was a Sunday, and there was a raid after raid after raid on car washes that Sunday. So June 8th was a horrible day because that's a day that we also knew that they were not going to let us into detention centers, and the reason we sue. So our rapid response immigration enforcement, quickly go, not sure where I point. Can it go? Okay. So we have documented 14,003 calls into our rapid response hotline. This is thank you to everybody who has volunteered and all our hotline operators. And this hotline has been operating every single day since June 6th, Sunday, Monday, Saturday, Sunday, holidays. We have now, because of our rapid responders, we have documented 3,191 reported sightings of immigration enforcement in our neighborhoods in a year, 365 days, do the math in terms of what that looks like. We have, our rapid responders have been present when in 477 times, our rapid responders have been present when arrests were happening. Right now, CHIRLA is working with 1,438 families in CHIRLA's case management program of individuals who have families in detention. We work, linked arm in arm. Many of us work with immigrant offenders on our legal representation, and those are some of the numbers that aggregate to the 3,500 that are part of our documentation. Okay. 94 cities have been impacted by immigration enforcement since June of 2025. And that includes 133 zip codes mentioned in our field reports. Primarily, those zip codes include Panorama City, North Hollywood, and Pico Rivera. We have captured, using the heat map, we have captured the areas where we have seen the maximum amount of impact, but captured every single place. And so the darker the shade, the more incidents have occurred in that region. And I think it's important from a civil rights perspective for you to understand that where you see the darkest areas are also areas where we have the highest number of Latino population. Often it's this place where you also have those individuals who are running the cities are also people of color. There are zip codes here where there were fire victims, so Pasadena, Altadena, and the San Fernando Valley, people who have not only dealt with the fires, but now with ICE enforcement as well. The reports, I also want you to note that a lot of people think that the raids only happened in the summer. They did not just happen in the summer. They have been happening all year to the present. And so this is just an example of capturing numbers between January and March in terms of the field reports. But I also want you to note that January in 2026, after June 2025, was our highest number of incidents. So we had 382 calls into the hotline on January of 2026 of raids that were happening in our communities. Again, 14 confirmed arrests and 83 federal agents observed across all incidents, 16 neighborhoods across LA, Compton, Glendale, Inglewood, Lincoln Heights, Panorama City. We've witnessed activity, of course, in the San Fernando Valley, Northeast LA, South Los Angeles, Echo Park, Boyle Heights, and West Los Angeles. I want you to know, in terms of the city of Los Angeles, no city council district has been hit more than CD9, with 94 families actually picked up from that council district. Locations targeted, and I wanted to go more into detail here, and hopefully, with time, I'm able to do that. So since that time, we have actually seen in terms of our incidents, the locations that callers have reported, of course, are street vending, sidewalks, day labor centers, Home Depots, near schools, retail parking lots, sidewalks, bus stops, apartment buildings, parks, and ICE check-ins. When we talk about everyday places, these are grocery stores. These are a Food for Less in Hawaiian Gardens, a Big Saver in downtown LA, a Super A Foods in Cypress Park. These are parking lots, a big box retail, outside laundromats, on freeway on-ramps, near bus stops. And a caller in July 2025 reported approximately 20 agents in dark green uniforms that stage in an empty parking lot on the 170 freeway in North Hollywood, covering their faces and some pointing guns to the street. 87 calls in the data set reference schools or school-adjacent activity. Callers reported unmarked vans parked outside Arroyo High School in El Monte on June 2025. In July, a caller described agents blocking a road adjacent to Southeast Academy High School in Norwalk. A parent received a school-issued email alert on January of 2026, reporting ICE in an area around Doris Place Elementary in Riverside. Obviously, we're talking LA County, but we also receive them from other areas. And a caller on January 2026 also reported a black van with temporary plates and a fully tinted windows parked in front of a middle school in Los Angeles. And another vehicle pulled over at Lemay Street near Columbus Elementary in Van Nuys at 7:26 in the morning. 287 calls describe surveillance behavior with unmarked or disguised vehicle agents photographing or recording people. In one situation, they actually hit in a water and power trucks that she believed were just strange. Law enforcement, when she started recording them, they started recording her back. And finally, on June 19th, a caller reported that ICE agents were at a Los Angeles medical center attempting to detain a patient. The note reads, ICE wants to detain a person, a doctor. The doctor needs advice. Call quickly. ICE agents in the room. The call came at 12:10 p.m. Someone in the hospital is called Chirla again, and the enforcement activity reached a point where the doctor and the staff member needed to know what to do when agents were now standing in the hospital room. These are just examples of what this is a list, but I felt it was important for us to just understand what happened. Our rapid response legal team from Clean Car Wash Campaign and Chirla went to the hospital room, and I want you to know that that person not only was released, but went back home and is going to be litigating in terms of what happened. The last thing is ICE check-ins. 130 calls of ICE check-ins where people were detained at their ICE check-ins where family members called as well. I'll go a little faster now. So we have done, out of the 1,438 families, we have done 771 wellness checks. We have done legal intakes for all those families, but 771 wellness checks after the legal intake. 41% are Mexican nationals, 20% are Guatemalans, 35% were detained at work, and 12% were on their way or leaving from work. 64% at that point have yet not secured legal representation. 60% are facing food insecurity, 64% are facing housing insecurity, 68% have dependent children. We have to do more for our little kids, our children, because they're being impacted too. We've met many of those children. We have to support them. 12.3% of the detainees were small business owners, and close to 23% reported medical needs with medication needs spanning diabetes, high blood pressure, cancer treatment, mental health conditions, and more. But what we have done, and I want this also to be in the record, is that collectively we're defending and supporting our families with legal and mutual aid support. These are many of the organizations and their flyers, because I want the record to show that we have not just stood idly by. We've engaged in legal and mutual support, including the creation of an LA County fire and raids victim rental assistance program of over $30 million. We have also mobilized in the courts, so we are part of Vasquez Perdomo case. We're suing in every way, every time that we see injustice. There were also LT versus Nome, suing for ICE inhumane conditions at the Adelanto prison. We've also passed legislation at the state level and at the local level to ensure protection, including AB 495. And right now, we want to make sure that SB 1105, which is to hold and account our local our local law enforcement to be on the side of the rapid responders, not against them, and to hold them accountable as well. And then to mobilize in the polls to activate, because we know that whoever is leading the state of California and the city of Los Angeles needs to stand with us. And we're marching in the streets, our picture of May 1st, because we will take it to the streets as well. I want to finish by saying today I have shared a lot of data points, but let us be clear. Every number represents a human being, a family, a future interrupted. Behind every worker is a mother, a father, a worker, a student, a neighbor. The harm caused by these attacks is profound. People are living in fear and families are being pushed to the edge, struggling to survive, struggling to hold on to hope. These are human rights abuses, and that is why we document them, so the truth cannot be erased, so the suffering cannot be denied, so that one day these individuals, their families, their communities will receive justice. We owe them more than sympathy. We owe them action. We owe them accountability, and we owe them a future where dignity, safety, and freedom are not privileges for a few, but rights guaranteed to all. And so I wanted to finish this presentation with two video testimonies, because you saw a lot of numbers in the thousands and thousands. I want every single number is a person, so I bring to you two testimonies, and just multiply those testimonies with all the thousands of numbers that I have presented to you. This is severe, and I just want to say thank you for being here in Los Angeles, because it matters so much that you hear directly from us, but also I want you to take the message that the scale of the attack on Los Angeles continues. It's huge, and we're just talking LA County, Riverside, San Bernardino, San Diego, on and on. It is an absolute attack on our communities. Thank you so much.
Lamentablemente hemos vivido varias familias y yo esta situación difícil de las redadas. Ya un año de estar viviendo esta pesadilla, esta situación difícil. Recuerdo bien ese día cuando mi hijo lo agarraron. Ha sido muy difícil saber que tenemos un familiar en un centro de detención, pero tenemos momentos, yo tuve momentos que lloré, yo tuve momentos que no quería ni siquiera levantar mi cabeza, tuve momentos que no quería ni siquiera comer. Desde ese día, sinceramente, mi vida no ha sido igual. También se ha dado la necesidad que hay personas que sinceramente no tienen ni siquiera nada que comer, no tienen dinero para hacer una llamada. Entonces me dice mi hijo, madre, aquí hay alguien que no tiene nada. Y le digo yo, hijo, hay que comprar un poquito de comida extra. Y ya veo yo la manera de cómo me dan los datos de las personas y yo les pongo aunque sea $20 para que puedan hacer llamadas, porque de verdad Hay personas allá adentro que no tienen a nadie. Son cosas que me han venido a llenar y por sobre todas las cosas, la fortaleza me la ha dado Dios. En oración, confío mucho en Él y guardo la esperanza. Yo sé que mi hijo va a salir de ese lugar pronto.
No era justo que le pasara esto. Esas persecuciones que les hacen, la gente se asusta, la gente mira para qué se cruzó esa calle, pero él se asustó porque vio que venía la gente con sus armas. Se comunicaba todos los días con nosotros, con sus nietos. Él trabajaba para ayudarnos a ellos. Él me decía que necesitaba trabajar un poco más y la situación se fue complicando más y más allá por la cosa de las redadas y todo eso, y él me decía que ya no encontraba mucho trabajo. No merecía morir así, no le hacía daño a nadie, solo quería luchar, trabajar honradamente. Quisiéramos que todo fuera un sueño de que él estuviera ahí todavía, pero no es así, lastimosamente.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone for being here, and thank you for that powerful presentation, the testimony that we just saw. We should let that sink in. My name is Rochelle Garza. I'm currently serve as the chair of the United States Commission on Civil Rights. It's an honor to be here. I want to start by talking a little bit about how we ended up here and the people's hearings, and then get into our testimony. The people's hearings were a result of frustration and anger of not seeing anything being done about what was happening across the country. The hearing was about creating a space and creating a document for what actually has been happening in this country. I think very often we've seen elected leadership just kind of gloss over and move on with the news cycle, and not actually look into what has happened, especially from our perspective as community members. And we're very fortunate to have a lot of support from the Hispanic Federation, from Latino Victory, from the Miranda Family Foundation, who saw this as an opportunity. And so we had our first hearing in St. Paul, Minnesota, and we heard from the community there in March. We had our second hearing in Chicago a couple weeks ago, and we are here in Los Angeles, and this is just one of many future hearings. We are looking at having a hearing in Texas, possibly two. We're looking in the South as well, because this has impacted the entire country. Because what we are seeing right now is the weaponization of immigration and customs enforcement. And I don't say that lightly. I'm a border resident. I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley. Immigration enforcement has been part of my everyday life. And what I am seeing right now is that's not enforcement. That's not about secure borders. What we are seeing is a terrorizing of our communities. So thank you for being here. I want to thank again the California Community Foundation and Miguel for hosting us here. Angelica Salas from CHIRLA for being an integral part of today's proceedings. Frankie Miranda, as I said earlier, from the Hispanic Federation. Catherine Pichardo from Latino Victory. Luis Miranda and Miranda Family Fund. And then I also want to thank the Texas Civil Rights Project team for being a major part of this endeavor. So I appreciate everyone's efforts, and I appreciate the community's efforts for being here today. And with that, I am going to introduce my co-host here. Marty Castro is the former chair of the Commission on Civil Rights, and I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's an honor to be here and an honor to have been asked to participate not only in the Chicago hearing, but in this one as well. As the first Latino to chair the United States Commission on Civil Rights by appointment of President Obama, it was always my hope, and I worked to ensure that I wouldn't be the last. And I'm so proud that Chair Garza is now the third. But she, like I, take this role seriously in that we're not there to be the chair of the civil rights for immigrants or the civil rights for Latinos. We are there to be the chairs of the civil rights of every single person within the boundaries of the United States. Because whether you're documented or not, whether you're a citizen or not, whether you're like me, a fourth-generation American on the side of my dad, or a first-generation American on the side of my mother, whether you're black, brown, Asian, Native American, you have civil rights in the United States of America. And those civil rights not only need to be respected, they must be enforced. And in order to be enforced, we often have to speak truth to power, even the power that puts us where we are. Chair Garza knows well that the Civil Rights Commission is an independent agency. While she was appointed by President Biden, I was appointed by President Obama. There are some that are appointed by Trump. Our true role, and I know this is not an official hearing, but it will lead to that, is to look at the facts and apply the law, regardless. And this is not the first time the Civil Rights Commission or elements thereof have looked at immigration. When I chaired the commission, even though I was an Obama appointee, we issued this report with Liberty and Justice for All that looked closely at how individuals, particularly children and unaccompanied minors and mothers and others, were being treated in the detention system. Detention systems run by DHS as well as by paid prison companies. And even though I was an Obama appointee, if you read this report, you will see how highly I criticize the administration for its violations of the civil rights of those detainees. Because this, and what we're doing here in the people's hearings, is not a partisan political effort. This is patriotism at its heart. We are here to create a record to ensure the civil rights of all persons in this country are ultimately enforced. And we've seen the violations here, and they will continue. I myself, as the former chair of the Civil Rights Commission, fourth-generation American, I was tear gassed twice and shot with rubber bullets for expressing my peaceful protest. And I'm lucky, but so many are not. And we've heard some already of the stories, and today we will document those, but not just for posterity, to ensure accountability and justice is ultimately done. That's going to happen. Don't doubt that we will get through this. This is not the first time something like this has happened in our country, but this time we will ensure that justice will be done. So thank you to all of you who are here today, especially the witnesses. We know this is going to be very emotional and difficult testimony, and we feel it with you because we are from the same communities. Even though we're not from LA, we are all one community, and we are symbiotic. So what happened here in LA, we felt it in Chicago, and what's happening in Chicago was felt in Minnesota. And until that is over, we will all continue to stand with one another. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marty.
We're very lucky to have you today with us, Marty. This is not an official hearing, but this is really important because I can take this back to my colleagues on the commission as we consider what to investigate next. You all should be aware that the Congressional Hispanic Caucus has formally requested the commission to investigate racial profiling in the wake of the Vasquez-Perdomo decision. The commission is bipartisan, it's independent. There are differing views on this issue, on immigration enforcement. But my goal here is to listen, to learn, to take back everything that I hear today to my fellow commissioners and to implore them that this is the most pressing civil rights issue of our era. So,
with that, we should go ahead and get started with the hearing. I'm gonna go over some housekeeping matters. We are gonna be hearing from experts, advocates, and individuals that are directly impacted by enforcement actions. So take that in. We are hearing from the folks most impacted. This is your time to tell your story. The event is being recorded. We do ask that folks in the audience be mindful to utilize our transition periods for any major movements so that we don't disrupt the recording and the process. And for awareness, there may be members of the media in and out of the room as well. We have translation services, as has been said earlier. If you are in need of that, please go to the back so that we can have translation between English and Spanish. And we also have blue flyers available with a QR code to scan and check out the people's record. This was the report that came from the investigation and hearing that we had in Minnesota. We are putting this on paper. So please scan a QR code and read that report. Panelists, you're going to have 5 minutes for remarks, and we'll go ahead and get them seated. But as a general matter, the panelists are going to have 5 minutes for remarks, so we can hear from everyone that's been scheduled. We will have a timekeeper helping us keep track. There's a clock in front of me. I'm not sure if it's functioning. It might. If it does not function, we will have somebody sitting to the right of me who can say when you have 1 minute left, and we'll actually hold a clock so that we can stay on time. Being on time is really critical. That way we hear everybody's story. We really need to make sure that we give everybody the space that they are allotted. Today, of course, is going to bring up a lot of emotions, a lot of strong feelings, and we recognize that behind every testimony is a person, a family, a parent, a child, a friend, a community member that has been deeply impacted. And we're grateful for the support of Yolanda from Clínica Romero, who is providing mental health support to those testifying. And if you need assistance, Kayla, can you raise your hand? Or you can reach out to her. And to those sharing today, thank you. We appreciate you. We're here to listen. We're going to go ahead and begin with our first panel. Panel 1A is Sanctuary Under Pressure, Federal Targeting, Local Coordination, and the Limits of Protection. This panel is going to examine how Los Angeles' sanctuary policies, identity, and public commitments to immigrant communities have come under pressure and increased immigration enforcement. As I said, each of y'all will have 5 minutes to present your remarks. Panelists include Nina Gyamfi, the executive director of the Black Alliance for Just Immigration, BAJI, Shiyu Ming Shir, deputy director of Immigrant and Racial Justice, California Immigrant Policy Center, Pablo Alvaro, executive director of the National Day Labor Organization Network, Erica Lomeli Corcoran, CEO of UFW Foundation, Gloria Yeska, community member from Palmdale. So we're going to go ahead and get started with Ms. Gyamfi.
Thank you so very much. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so very much. So glad to be here, Madam Chair, who are listening both here in the room and also over the live stream. My name is Nana Gyamfi, and I am the executive director of the Black Alliance for Just Immigration. My pronouns are she, her, wonu, in the Tree language of Ghana, where my family is from. And BAJI is a Black national organization that fights for the rights of Black migrants and African Americans. We do so through advancing racial justice and migrant rights. We have our offices and staff here in Los Angeles, as well as the Inland Empire, but also in Brooklyn, in DC, in Miami, in Atlanta, in Houston, in the Bay, in Minneapolis, and in Wichita, to give a sense of the way that we have experienced these invasions all over the country. We've experienced all of this together, and we've seen the body snatchers, as we refer to them, that is ICE, CBP, federal agents, and you know they had them all out here, as well as the mass mercenaries, on June 6th of last year. And we saw that as a very intense version of what Black migrants actually deal with all the time. Baji is known in our 20 years of existence for trying to uplift for folks that racial justice is an immigrant rights issue, and that immigrant rights is a racial justice issue, and how we understand that, if we did not before, so much in this year in which immigration enforcement has been used as the tip of the spear to expand the police state. When we talk about this, you said, Madam Chair, as being the civil rights issue of our era, it becomes that issue of our era when we see those things working together as opposed to siloed. Baji actually has a framework to have this conversation called Stop Taking Our People. And in that framework, we talk about the connection between racial justice, anti-Blackness, criminalization, and migrant rights. And you can see more of that at WeMakeThemStop.org, which we advise people to do. When we erase and ignore what happens with Black immigrants in the case of enforcement, particularly looking at this past year, we run the risk of finding ourselves in a problem when we're trying to figure out how we address and make Los Angeles truly a sanctuary city. What we saw with Black migrants is not necessarily the raids, right? What we saw with Black migrants was people being picked up driving while Black, particularly folks who were Uber, Lyft drivers, delivery people. What we saw were people walking while Black, literally walking down the street, standing at bus stops, standing at train stations, being in the train system where we have all of this policing, and finding themselves existing while Black, caught up in the criminal sanction system, and then handed over when they saw there was no reason on the police side over to ICE. We also saw many of our people being picked up in courtrooms, many of our people being picked up in check-ins, as was described by Senator Padilla and also by my sister Angelica. That was a way that so many of us as Black migrants were pulled into this body snatcher system. And while the community did all that it could, and it continues to do the work of providing support, whether that support is in the form of protests, whether that support is in the form of coming between the body snatchers and our community members, whether that is in the way of going to court with people, accompanying people at their ICE check-ins and at their court appearances, we find that those actions are being criminalized in the face of law enforcement here, in local law enforcement, with no support at all for people being able to protect our communities. And we know that when we're talking about Black migrants, that we did not need this situation to understand what racial profiling is. That racial profiling has been what Black people, regardless of citizenship or migrant status, have had to deal with since the beginning of policing. Some of us remember Daryl Gates. Some of us remember Sheriff Block. Some of us remember all of that to this day. We remember Jim O'Donnell, and we remember what he did as the sheriff of LA County, and we see what he is doing as the chief of LAPD. We know the ways in which racial profiling happens. And it's not lost on us, though it's not talked about often, that the Judge Frimpong, who made the decision, who wrote out that racial profiling was unconstitutional, is a woman of Ghanaian heritage, who has an understanding as a Black woman at the intersection of migration of what racial profiling means for Black folks and immigrants, Black immigrants and immigrants of color alike. And so, as we look forward, we want to make sure that we document, yes, that Black immigrants have been snatched and ripped from our families, that we've been ripped from our communities, that it's happened in the streets, that it's happened in the courts, that it's happened in the check-ins, that it's happened at the job, that it's happened at the school, that it's happened in our places of worship, including mosques as well as churches. We do want to document that. We want to document the detention. Baji says detention itself is torture. And we want to document that that torture is made even worse when they don't have language interpretation, as we don't hear, for folks that speak French, that speak Haitian Creole, Amharic, and Tigrinya, especially when those people have medical concerns. But we also want to put on the record that So much in the city has failed us on the elected ends, in the failure to deal with the role that local law enforcement has played in being effectively the backup singers to the body snatchers as they come and get our people. And we need for that to end. We need for city leaders to take the position that they are cutting off that connection between police and the body snatchers, that they are not going to allow more data sharing, that they are ending the co-surveillance, that they are no longer going to respond to the calls for help, and that they're going to stop criminalizing those of us that are standing up and making sure that our people are protected. We remember after Reconstruction how the federal government abandoned those Black people who were freed, and we feel that abandonment now as we face this greatest challenge. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're going to go to Ms. Cheer, and Kayla here will have the timing.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shuming Cheer. I'm a Deputy Director of Immigrant and Racial Justice at the California Immigrant Policy Center, where I work on statewide and local policies to support immigrant justice and also protect against detentions and deportations. In terms of my organization, we were founded in 1996 in response to federal immigration and welfare laws that profoundly disaffected and disenfranchised immigrants. So 30 years later, we are now working on statewide immigrant rights issues that lead to protections and advancements for the rights of immigrants and their families, including bills that created the AB 60 driver's license, the Trust, Truth, and California Values Act, Health for All, and other accomplishments that we were only able to do with the partnership of a vast array of organizations across the state. On the local level, we've played a central role in winning multiple sanctuary policies in cities and counties across the state, including in multiple jurisdictions across LA County, which I'll talk about today. So at their core, people often ask, what are sanctuary policies supposed to do? So they are a statement that local or state resources should not be used for immigration enforcement. Instead, that these resources should be used for the priorities of local and state communities. This means not spending even 1 penny or 1 cent on the budget on helping with immigration enforcement, as well as not using staff or resources such as property, vehicles, or other types of city or government-owned property to facilitate a mass deportation agenda. This has been shown through both constitutional as well as legal doctrines that local and state leaders can choose how to focus their limited resources, and that the federal government cannot force them to use those resources for federal immigration enforcement. So why is this so important? First, these policies make communities safer and healthier and build trust in government. The overall atmosphere of fear caused by mass raids and detentions harms the relationships between communities of color and government agencies. Many immigrant communities, particularly those living in fear of deportation, are reluctant to engage with local law enforcement or local government agencies if they think that could lead to detention or separation from their families, jobs, schools, and communities. This creates a dangerous cycle where people across Los Angeles County and the state are deterred from seeking emergency services, medical services, or other basic services to keep them safe and healthy. So in this context, sanctuary policies reassure all residents they will not be targeted by federal immigration enforcement simply for seeking help from local or state agencies and services. Second, sanctuary policies protect people's private information which has been weaponized and used to identify people for deportation. Sanctuary policies state that government bodies will not ask about or collect information about immigration status and place of birth. This helps to ensure that all residents, including children and families, can safely access vital public services. And this is particularly important to ensure the success of programs providing legal assistance and cash aid to immigrants, and to reassure people that their sensitive information will not be shared with federal immigration enforcement authorities. So in summary, sanctuary policies have kept thousands of families together, protect due process for everybody, and make us all safer. However, to be effective, these protections must be known, enforced, and strong enough for all families to rely on them. There's a couple of gaps that exist within traditional sanctuary policies. For instance, they do not address the growing area of concern about the collection of information about immigrants as well as U.S. citizens through automated license plate readers, databases operated by companies such as Flock and Palantir, and other surveillance systems. So our recommendation is that localities must end contracts with private and public companies that collect and share people's immigration-related data and bar future contracts. Fusion centers are another way in which sanctuary protections are being circumvented. They are data sharing hubs operated between local, state, and federal law enforcement and private entities that collect, analyze, and distribute highly personal information. This personal information is then shared with federal and out-of-state agencies, including our location, identity, biometrics, and social media activity, without our consent and without regard to state and local laws. So we need to enact accountability and oversight of these fusion centers and ultimately dismantle them. Another area not addressed in sanctuary policies is the role of law enforcement in responding to calls for service from federal immigration agents. ICE and Border Patrol have bypassed sanctuary policies prohibiting local police from assisting in immigration enforcement through the initiating calls for service, quote unquote calls for service to local police. The LAPD responded to these requests during at least 2 immigration raids over the weekend of June 6th to 8th last year, where they blocked the street and cleared the way for federal agents to depart after making immigration-related arrests. In practice, the LAPD was assisting in immigration raids. So we call on the LAPD and other law enforcement agencies to update their policies to decline responses to calls for service that involve assisting with immigration enforcement. And finally, despite the sanctuary protections in California, nothing in state law currently prevents local and state law enforcement officers from taking side jobs as ICE or deportation agents. This is during a time when ICE is spending millions of dollars trying to recruit local police to join their forces. So as a solution, we must pass legislation such as AB 1537, No Side Jobs for ICE, to ban local and state law enforcement officers from engaging in any kind of secondary employment that involves facilitating immigration deportation. So these practices of data sharing, responding to calls for service from federal immigration agents, and moonlighting as ICE agents threaten constitutional rights, privacy, and public trust. We must build on our existing sanctuary policies to address these areas and make sure that no local or state resources are being used to aid Trump's mass raids and deportation agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We'll go to Ms. Corcoran.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be here in community with all of you. My name is Erika Lomelik Corcoran. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the UFW Foundation. The UFW Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit organization established in 2006 that provides labor advocacy, free or low-cost immigration legal services, education, outreach, and advocacy for farm workers, immigrants, and communities in rural California, Washington, Georgia, and Michigan. This June, as we all know, marks the 1 year since the Trump administration began its attacks on the city of Los Angeles and threatened the rights and livelihoods of our communities. To the UFW Foundation, we knew what that meant. 6 months prior to that, January 2025, we saw similar attacks in rural and farm worker communities in the Central Valley here in California. Many of our leaders were processed or held here in Los Angeles. What we experienced was ICE agents going around and kidnapping people in broad daylight, ripping families apart, and terrorizing immigrant and non-immigrant communities alike. From California to Georgia, farm-working immigrants are forced to choose between earning a paycheck and risking detention, deportation, and family separation on their way to work. About 50% of farm workers are undocumented. The impacts of these attacks have been extraordinary. Fear of immigration enforcement has profound, life-changing consequences for immigrants and farm workers, leaving families to make impossible decisions between their livelihoods and their safety. When workers are afraid of immigration enforcement authorities, they are less likely to report wage theft, unsafe working conditions, harassment, or retaliation. This fear gives bad employers more power and weakens basic labor protections for all workers. Even when workers choose to stay home, missing 1 or 2 days of work could mean falling behind on rent, food, childcare, utilities, transportation, and basic medical needs. According to a survey study the UFW Foundation conducted in 2025, 92% of 2,250 farm workers who completed the survey reported immigration raids and deportations affected their employment. These are the consequences of ICE raids in our communities. Yet, despite the challenges of our community, despite these challenges, our community's resilience continues to preserve today. Our organization continues to provide immigration legal services and representation to farm workers and immigrants targeted by this administration. Last year, we filed a habeas corpus and won, and our client Milton was released from ICE detention. Each of these wins matter. Additionally, as an organization that supports and provides services to DACA recipients, what we are seeing with respect to the long delays for renewals feels very intentional. We're doing all we can to ensure that DACA recipients are informed about the long delays and that they renew 8 to 10 months in advance to ensure their work permits don't expire. But immigration enforcement and unnecessary delays are not the only weapon this administration is using against immigrants. The Trump administration is attacking farm workers by lowering their wages drastically. The UFW Foundation, the UFW, and 18 individual farm workers sued the Trump administration in November 2025, arguing that the Trump administration's wage cut rule is a violation of the federal statute governing the H-2A Agricultural Guest Worker Program. These wage cuts are estimated to transfer over $4 billion. These are numbers that are still hard to say. $4 billion in wages from farm workers to employers annually. The wage cuts are already affecting workers like Isabel Pánfilo, a 23-year-old farm worker who prior to the cuts was paid $20 an hour. This helped her pay for school and support and uplift her family. This year, following the wage cuts, Isabel is now getting paid $17 an hour. This amounts to thousands of dollars a year in lost income and making it difficult for her to make ends meet. Isabel's story is one of many being affected by this wage cut. The wage cuts show that this administration is not just enriching private prisons corporation, but also corporate agriculture, as it works to replace immigrant workers with a more vulnerable, exploitable H-2A workforce. In closing, the immigration raids and detentions are doing life-altering damage to our communities, our neighborhoods, our schools, our work sites, and our families. We must stand up for the rights of all immigrants and ensure that the cruelty being felt through immigrant communities all across the country do not continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Alvarado.
My name is Pablo Alvarado, and I'm the co-executive director of Endilon. I am going to share how enforcement has changed and how it feels in the community. I'm going to make a few points. The first one is the original shift. A year ago, enforcement at least claimed to target specific people. Now the goal is volume, and anyone who looks like a migrant worker is a fair game. Most people taken were never anyone's target. They were standing nearby, driving home, or waiting for work, and got swept up because agents needed numbers. The overwhelming majority have no criminal record. These are fathers, vendors, day laborers, car wash workers, caregivers, and longtime neighbors, not the threats the government describes. Home Depot and the day labor corners. The corners our workers have used for decades to feed their families became hunting grounds. Agents in tactical gear jump out of unmarked vehicles and rented trucks and chase people through the parking lots. The same LA stores got hit over and over, sometimes more than once in a day. A morning looking for a day's wage or buying tools now means risking everything. Home Depot has remained silent. Traffic stops and racial profiling. Agents now stop people in their cars and on the sidewalk for no reason other than how they look, the language they speak, and the work they do. Border Patrol is operating deep inside Los Angeles, nowhere near any border. This is what our community challenged in the Vasquez Perdomo versus Noem. Stops driven by racial profiling, not by any real suspicion. The Supreme Court let these stops continue, and Justice Kavanaugh's opinion openly approved detaining someone based on ethnicity, language, or occupation. Being a brown day laborer is now treated as reason enough to be stopped. People feel it every time they drive to work or wait at a corner. A routine stop can now become a disappearance. Local jails and transfers are still happening. Even with the California sanctuary law, sheriffs are still handing people over to ICE, straight from local jails, and those handovers have gone up and sharply not down. The Values Act bars cooperation in most cases. A sheriff cannot honor an ICE hold, cannot keep someone past their release date for ICE, and cannot share private information. But the law carves out an exception for people with certain prior convictions, and for those cases, it lets sheriffs choose whether or not to notify or transfer. Many sheriffs choose to cooperate. Federal agents also found a workaround that skips state law entirely. Through Operation Guardian Angel, they get federal judicial warrants to pull together out-of-county jails around the protections of the Values Act. Why the fear has not lifted? The large, visible sweeps have slowed somewhat, but only after public outrage forced a pause. The tactics are still on the books and can switch back at any moment. The damage does not stop when the cameras leave. Kids are kept home from school. Parents skip medical appointments and court dates. People stop calling police even when they are victims of a crime. Whole neighborhoods are living smaller, quieter, more afraid. That is what this past year has done to the day labor and immigrant community in Los Angeles, and it is still happening. At the same time that there is widespread fear, there's courage. Pedro Vasquez Perdomo, a day laborer, was waiting for work to go to the reconstruction areas in Altadena, together with Isaac and Carlos, when he was snatched by a Border Patrol agent and put into an unmarked van. Pedro Vasquez Perdomo refused to be a victim. Now he's a plaintiff in the lawsuit, a subject of change, a fighter for justice and human rights. While our community is under this systematic persecution, we're standing up. And to the extent that immigration opinion, public opinion is shifting in this country, is because ordinary Americans have decided to go to day labor corners when we issue a call, come and adopt that day labor corner, and bear witness to the cruelty and the violence. Thousands of Americans heard the call and came out and said, this is wrong, and this is why I'm documenting it. As I said before, Home Depot has remained silent. They have said all the things that they cannot do. They've never said anything that they can do. And that's why the community is outraged and demanding that they become the good neighbor that they should be, because they benefit from our community. They take our money. So as bad as things look, there's courage and there's love and there's solidarity.
Thank you. Ms. Yesca, do you want to get us started?
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Gloria Yesca, soy residente de la ciudad de Pandel. He estado de voluntaria por la organización de Salva por alrededor de 3 años y he estado presente en casi todas las distribuciones de comida y he visto de cerca la necesidad que hay ahorita, especialmente. La gente pues ha perdido sus trabajos, tienen miedo a salir a trabajar. La mayoría pues limpian casas, en construcción. Personalmente en mi casa, mi esposo está en proceso, pero igual, o sea, el miedo de ahorita que no respetan igualmente si tienes un papel que presentar, es igual, se va en la mañana, pero no sabes si va a regresar en la tarde. En lo personal he vivido todos esos miedos y esas angustias y he visto de cerca toda la necesidad que hay. Debido a eso, yo he estado siempre ayudando en la comunidad. Me ha gustado estar cerca de la organización que está allá en el área que yo vivo, es Salva, y siempre he estado ahí. Y pues quiero dar las gracias a todas esas organizaciones que nos dan el apoyo moralmente y pues ayudan a las necesidades que tienen todas las personas que están ahorita sin empleo y con el miedo también ahorita de que creo para el 1 de julio ya no van a haber muchas cosas médicas que van a cubrir para los inmigrantes. Y pues esperando en Dios y en las personas que Dios pone así como ustedes para que nos sigan apoyando. Y pues quiero dar las gracias por eso y por eso quise venir acá para apoyar pues a las organizaciones que están detrás de los inmigrantes que no tienen voz y por medio de ustedes sabemos que sí nos pueden oír. Gracias.
Okay, muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much to all the panelists. We have a few minutes for some questions, so I'll turn it over to.
Well, I wrote a list of questions that I have. I'm very curious about the wage cuts that you were talking about, Ms. Corcoran. Sorry, I said Corcoran earlier, but because I think, so what I've seen and what we've seen as we've been doing these hearings is an attack on the economic power of Latinos. And so if you would talk a little bit more about the wage theft and how that plays into, to what we're seeing happen, not just in LA, but nationwide.
Yes, thank you. So nationwide, what happened is that the Trump administration is trying to take away what we called a formula to see, how the wages should be done, particularly for H-2A workers. So they're workers that come mostly from Mexico on a temporary visa. What's happening here is that what we call, modern day slavery or cheap labor, the wages are a lot lower. So what we're seeing right now in the last year is that domestic workers that have been farm workers here, some of them undocumented, are being displaced. So we sued to make sure that the A word, what is the formula that is being done to show that, it's a violation of how to determine wages. So right now, when the rule went last year in October, it went effective immediately. They didn't allow any public comment. They didn't allow any timing for us, which usually is the case with regulatory work. So we've already been seeing these impacts happening. Right now, about 2 months ago, we had a lawsuit or for preliminary injunctions because, like Isabel's story, they're already seeing their wages being affected. We didn't win on that, but we still have a strong case based on merits that this is going to be stopped. So this is not our first time that we've done this. The Trump administration did this in the first Trump 1.0, and they tried to freeze the wages. We had a lawsuit and we won. So right now, what we're trying to do is just gathering testimonies, but unfortunately, those testimonies are coming more. It's now June, so we're getting peak season when the workers are coming in. And what we're seeing is also too that the H-2A visas are increasing dramatically state by state. So just in the last 7 years, there have quadrupled. We did this survey and where we surveyed over 2,000 farm workers, self-identified, and everybody's saying the same thing, right? Like one is not only going to work and fearing deportations, but also the wage cut that's happening simultaneously at the same time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Okay. Mr. Alvarado, you mentioned Home Depot. Back home in Chicago, I run a large social services agency, and we have a number of facilities for which we're constantly renovating and updating. And so for years, we've had a business relationship with Home Depot. We have a credit card and everything. But when it began, and they began to allow ICE going into Home Depots and picking up our local day laborers, I directed my staff to no longer do business with Home Depot. It got more expensive for us to go to some other places, but it also resulted in the Home Depot manager reaching out to my staff and saying they'd give us 10% if we go back. And I said, we'll only go back if you stop letting ICE into your facilities. They didn't talk back to us. Have there been efforts here or with your organization or others to speak to leaders at Home Depot? Because it seems to me very short-sighted of a business whose clientele makes up so many of us that allows something like that to happen within their facilities. And has there been any kind of economic boycott attempted here on organizations like Home Depot?
Our organization has had what I would say, well, the day labor community in general has had a very tumultuous relationship with the corporation ever since it was created. Day laborers were already looking for work before Home Depot came in. Oftentimes, they hire security guards to keep workers out. Workers have been targeted even when they're going inside to shop because they're also customers. They're not just there looking for work. And it's very convenient for the store, actually, for homeowners, contractors to come, buy their tools, their materials, and pick up the work. Very convenient. But they haven't honored that relationship. And again, it depends on who is running the stores. It appears that Home Depot doesn't have a policy. Every store manager does whatever the store manager wants. Mm-hmm. If you have a racist store manager, then what's that you're going to expect? Racism, calling the police, using the police, etc. There have been calls for a boycott in Los Angeles and all over the country. My organization has not participated in that boycott because we respond to the needs of the day laborers, and the day laborers keep looking for work in those places. So we cannot go against the community that we serve. There are day labor centers in Los Angeles and in other places that are within the premises of Home Depot. What we want is more cooperation with them, and what we want them to do something about it. We know that they can request judicial warrants. We know that they can close the stores to protect their customers. We know that the parking lot is their premises. We know that they have the float camera system documenting everything that happens in their parking lots. I know that we're pushing for, in California, we're pushing for the Repair Act, which is a piece of legislation that would actually require Home Depot at least to report on those raids. The bill is moving in the legislature, and hopefully it'll get to the desk of the governor, and we expect the governor to sign it. And this is what we have to do to make sure that Home Depot is a good neighbor. There is also a resolution that shareholders submitted to make sure that they eliminate the float camera system, because we don't know what kind of information they're sharing. We know that the system is there. Mm-hmm. We don't have evidence of them sharing that information with ICE or other federal agents, but it would be good for your report to include this corporation that is a fundamental player in how this cruel, unjust, violent immigration enforcement unfolds.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're out of time for this panel. We really appreciate the time that you took to be with us today. Please join me giving them a round of applause for being with us. We're going to take a very brief break. We'll be coming back in less than 5 minutes, so for our second panel.